He's like,
I'm back.
sleep. Good night.
I'm back. I think.
Dude, your stream died. The stream's gone.
Alright, well, it should restart.
Molding.
Okay, it did restart.
We're back. Are we back?
We're back. Oh my god.
Let's go.
Oh.
Greg's
Everyone
molding.
signed
He's
the
molded off
petition.
the face of Moldcast.
Everyone signed the petition to get Google Fiber to awesome.
Hey, we're still trying to get signatures for Kane.
Oh, but
True. We're trying to get signatures for everybody.
essentially what I was saying is like when it comes to a game like CS, like production is like important in CS, and it definitely improves the
Is stream
experience a
running
lot.
smoothly? Yes, it is. Let's
Right.
go.
But what do you call
Yeah,
it?
I get what you mean.
Like with CS though, like you like having a worse production isn't as impactful as it is for like games that are harder to understand. But yeah.
I still watch every day. I watch the Malta Vibes arena matches. Their production value is garbage tier.
I mean, again, it always goes back. It always goes back to that level of accessibility, and in that regard, I would agree that the CS:GO is like arguably the best esport for that reason. But I would also say that there's like a variety of fighting games that are also really good for similar reasons. It's because they're not cluttered. There's not dozens of characters with unique abilities to factor into every match. The strategy variance comes in the form of like layout choices and maps and the team and players participating. And anybody can appreciate the reactions and the speed at which its playing strategy is usually more obvious when viewing in a game like CS:GO than it is in like a game like League or Dota. And it's super obvious what skilled level players are at with it when in CS:GO accuracy statistics are in the form of like headshot percentages, or when you see players pick up kills on people you couldn't even see.
Yeah. Like it's really.
But then it's like, as I said, it's like fighting. Like there are certain fighting games that are like that are just as good like that in CS:GO, but they're at the same time, like you could.
Tekken's pretty nice to understand, like the level of skill required for Tekken.
I can also understand for like some people, it can be pretty hard to grasp, like the fighting games, and that can like hurt the enjoyment for them. But there are people like. But they can still be entertained to watch. Like you can have like zero knowledge of how Street Fighter V plays, and a person can still be entertained watching two people fight. Like sure, they might not understand like the controls or the complexities of the combos and whatnot, but you don't need to know how
two people punching each other.
Like you don't need to know how to box to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's kind of like watching boxing or what is it, UFC, right? Ultimate Fighting. It's not about like, oh my god, he did.
And then you have
he used his jabs really well. It's more so like they're punching each other, and that's fun. It's like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, and then you have something like Dota that's like, it has like hype moments, like as I said earlier, but it cannot be understood in the same way that like you could like people can understand like most fighting games. Like a newbie has to ask like way too many basic questions just to even grasp like the situation. It's like, why isn't he going after that one other player in the same lane? Why isn't he going after the low guys? Why is he killing his own creatures and teammates? Why isn't he where the action is? So like the new player is going to be too distracted with like and puzzled with these questions to really like to find entertainment value out of a Dota game. And frankly, nobody can really blame them.
That's fair.
Adding on to like Greg's point of like being in multiple tiers to an esport, it's kind of like how there are different levels in sports, right? And the more passionate you are about your sport, the more likely you are going to tune into every stage of that sport, right?
Yeah.
Ranging from watching high school prospects develop into collegiate athletes, and then collegiate athletes getting picked in the first round of the NBA, going pro overseas, making it in the NBA, and then having their careers, right? That is also part of what happens in quote-unquote simpler games because they're easier to understand at all levels of the game, right? It's like if you go watch an under 12 basketball game, you know they have to put the ball in the hoop, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're 12-year-olds, but there will be some balls put in the hoop. But other than that,
they're not gonna be nope. Physically capable.
Hopefully some threes, right? You know, but
maybe one or two.
You also have cases where like people can like hate playing a particular game, like awesome with Overwatch nowadays, but you can still enjoy it as a spectator sport.
Exactly.
Yeah, like me and I think it's the same with me and CS, right? Like I find it so boring to play, but that's because I'm used to used to like the
Greg is mobbing
chaos of
chat.
Overwatch and fast-paced chaos of Overwatch, right?
To be honest, that's how I am with Valorant too. Like I don't like playing Valorant, but I do like watching Valorant.
Yeah, like watching CS or watching Valorant, like watching tactical shooters, just like for me is a lot more fun watching it than playing it at times
I think
because I enjoy because there's such high tier plays and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my god, you're putting me on the edge of my seat. Meanwhile, on Valorant, I'm like, I'm about to fall asleep just holding this corner for 3 minutes straight or something like that.
I think a lot of like what makes a good esport has to do with like how nuanced a game is and how like you can like pick up subtle like things from players that can tell you like, oh shit, like this was actually like I swore, but what do you call it? Like, oh, this is actually like a really good play, and like or like
Greg is over this.
they had
We're all
it's
fired
like,
after this.
it's like, oh, they had a really good setup, and like you might not know that if you don't really play the game, but like as you like watch more and play more, you start appreciating like different aspects of it, and you start seeing like these like smaller details that you end up appreciating more.
That's
Absolutely.
fair. Yeah, there's like a lot more finer details that we could.
I mean,
everybody just-
do you guys think there's an example of a good esports game that is not as popular as it is right now?
I think Rocket League.
I personally think Rocket League is
Yeah.
very
Rocket League, yeah, Rocket League is super fun. I don't know.
The thing
I
is,
find
though,
Rocket League super fun to
it's-
like watch and like play.
Rocket League is
As of right
definitely
now.
Rocket League is definitely growing like a lot, but I feel like it hasn't grown as like I felt like at this point it would have been bigger, right? Like it's definitely like pretty big, but I feel like it definitely should be a lot bigger than it currently is. Because
Its growth rate is very slow compared to other.
I was gonna say
esports, like-
StarCraft too, but that is a way better answer.
Okay.
Our poor
StarCraft
StarCraft
2.
players in
Okay,
shambles right now.
StarCraft 2 still has one of the biggest scenes in Korea.
Yeah,
Also-
but I'm just making it a point of like globally, right?
Yeah.
Globally, it still has a really big scene. It's just not talked about that much because more companies decided to invest. Like it's more of the corporate side of things. Like more marketing has gone into these other games, which are team based and not necessarily like a 1v1 mind game, right? It's more so
Yeah, they're
about
following-
making it. It's
following
about
the
making
trends.
it marketable.
Yeah, they're
like it's
following
marketing
trends.
people.
I
Yeah.
think personally, like
So I definitely think Rocket League like is one of them. I don't know. I kind of recently I've started to appreciate a little bit more Siege because I've been playing a little bit more Rainbow Six Siege. And it's like
I mean, Siege kind of popped
I
off.
mauled at that game a lot, but because I'm bad at it. But it's like I found like an appreciation for it in terms of like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like it's not just I look at head, click head, I pick character, OP character, I look at someone, click head, I one shot them. It's more like I need to check 15 different corners. I've got these abilities that I could use for information, and I have to reach through this. I have to scout where the thing is, where the objective is, or what the objective is. I need to make sure I understand where I'm going to spawn in from. Like, there's a lot more complexities to Rainbow Six Siege that, because I've played it a lot more, I've come to appreciate. But Rocket League is definitely one of those like underappreciated
Siege kind of
because it's very simple. It's very simple if you think about it by concept. It's just a bunch of cars hitting a ball into a net. It's like soccer,
It's
but
car
video
soccer.
game.
Yeah, I mean
It's
that's
car soccer.
That's like one of the biggest reasons why I thought it would pop up more, just because like it's so. I think like it's really easy to understand, but I think it kind of goes back to the accessibility thing because like a lot of the other.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
he's died again.
Oh no,
He's dying
died
again, boys.
What? My internet's fine.
It's over. You're like cutting
oh,
it
your
out.
mic cut out then.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but what I was saying was that like it kind of goes back to the accessibility thing, because like Rocket League still isn't free. It's gonna be free, but it still isn't free. And I think once it becomes free, it'll pop up even.
It's been
more.
free this summer though.
No, it still hasn't. What do you call it?
No,
They
not
said,
yet.
yeah,
Oh, not yet.
For
No,
Epic
no.
Games Store.
yeah.
It's either tomorrow or like the end of the season, like the end of this coming season. That's when they're gonna make it free for
Yeah.
everybody.
I also think if you watch a Rocket League game or like a montage, you appreciate how good they are, but sometimes it's not. It doesn't seem that
I mean, Rocket
Right.
League. Rocket League.
like if you don't enjoy the game, right? If you
That's
don't
fair.
like the
Like
game,
I
like
prefer
if
people
you play shoot, if you play, yeah, no, I assume all our Rocket League team has mauled it at least once in their lives at the game. But if you come from a, like, let's say you come from a MOBA where you used to all this well, I don't say there isn't methodical thinking because there are rotations in Rocket League. How you play as a team is obviously really big. But the casual fan base looks at it and has a big disconnect because of the amount of hours they have to put in to play like that.
Right.
And then once they go out there's like a disconnect of why they're doing it, why they do this, and then they only see that, and then they get accustomed to doing that.
I mean, that's yeah. Like going off what you're saying, Rocket League mechanics are just pretty hard to understand from just looking at it because you don't really understand until you actually play it. But like when it comes to an FPS and even like a MOBA, like you understand like, oh, this person moved their mouse there and did that thing, right? But like for Rocket League, it's like okay, like you don't really understand how hard like someone has to actually learn like movement mechanics to actually be able to do flips or like do like turns midair and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot easier to wrap your head around clicking M1 on a head.
Yeah.
That's true. Like Liar, there's more appreciation for just clicking heads than scoring
goes back-
points.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of lost my train of thought, but I was gonna include like the Call of Duty example and Halo example, where you basically see Space Marines shoot each other, and soldiers just run.
Run
I
around,
think-
shoot
you know,
each other with
I think this like
ruins and LMGs and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like this also leads to like another thing, like what can make a good, like what can make a break esport is having a strong competitive balance.
Yeah.
So like
That's
a
true.
level playing field could be essential for game to flourish as a spectator sport like Counter Strike.
I'm gonna be honest. I kind of want Halo 3 to come back as a competitive esport
I mean,
because of how like simple it is. Like there weren't that many mechanics, right? In Halo 3. Halo 3 didn't have like the usage of abilities. People all moved at like the same speed. The only gimmicks were like overshield and invisibility and stuff like that, and then the weapons themselves instead of being like very multi-dimensional, which is what the creators of Halo didn't want to make it. Like Halo Reach was the last one done by Bungie, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna make it so that you have these abilities that you can equip," and everybody's like, "Well, sprint or evade. That's like the meta. Like that's the best thing you can pick right now." And like all the other abilities just weren't as used as much, like armor lock, shield bubble, etc., etc.
I think.
Like
Go ahead, Ryan.
Like either way is like ideally you want it so that both teams or both opposing players are given a fair chance of success. And unbalanced games are by their nature a lot less competitive because
200 years.
fans of esports love to bet on like the actions.
You have,
Like
Yeah.
you also have to consider like how much a developer actually caters to like a competitive audience because I feel like one of the biggest reasons why like Halo, Call of Duty, Fortnite, and like even Overwatch a little bit, like the biggest reason why they haven't gone like bigger than they could is just because a lot of the developers focus more on the casual aspect, which is fine if it makes them more money, but you can't have the best of both worlds, right? Like that's why you see like CS:GO,
Yeah.
CS:GO
That-
and League are huge esports because they focus primarily
are.
on the competitive
and
aspect.
then you have Valorant, which is a game that's like designed from the ground up to be an esport. And
Yeah.
Battle Royale as a genre of game is just struggling to
Yeah.
crack the esports scene. Period. Like Epic Games is just throwing heaps of cash at like a calendar of professional Fortnite tournaments.
I think
And then you have a nascent PUBG circuit that
Mhm.
emerged like some time ago, but like both titles are like hamstrung by the reliance on RNG and Fortnite just having like very stupid mechanics in it.
I
Yeah.
just don't think battle royale is a genre of game that is
Yeah,
I mean,
really
'cause-
works with spectator experience. You cannot
it works against it.
100 people on the map and create a narrative out of it.
the thing is
I don't
like
know, man.
when it comes to the mechanics of battle royales, like it's fairly simple to understand, right? But the issue is that there's so many people that you have and so many things that you have to follow that it becomes way too overwhelming. And I don't think it'll
Yeah, it's
unless someone
That issue of
revolutionizes unless someone revolutionizes the way that you like spectate the esport, I feel like it's never going to be something that's big.
you gotta have like an emperor side on things.
And
It's very hard for a lot of people
the chat is agreeing with this right now, but
to actually do it. Like it's hard to spectate in itself and hard to like even shoutcast because you could have like 5 different build battles happening, like for Fortnite, right? Or any battle royale. You could have 5 different individual 1v1 fights happening. You can't
to be honest,
like you
I
might
think-
have to put them through like different
I-
stages,
I
like do a
think-
replay.
to be honest, you can kind of make an argument for it being worse for like the players in the tournament for like Fortnite. It's like a professional player for Fortnite could train for hours each day in a bid to like succeed in a big upcoming tournament to win millions of dollars, and then they suffer like terrible luck with like weapons, and they're because they aren't as fortunate to get like the good guns, they lose to somebody who could be objectively worse than them, but just had better RNG in the match.
Yeah.
And so like the randomness of the draw is a major component to Fortnite's success as a casual game. And Epic has to compete like a unique balancing act to try to offer pros a solid and balanced experience while also allowing millions of players to try to enjoy the RNG reliant game. But it's not really working out for them. Overwatch has faced a similar dilemma before because Overwatch initially was meant to be like a lot more casual, and then like they would even like went as far as to say we're not an esport. We're not an esport. For goodness sake, people, we're not an esport. And then the money started rolling in, investors started pouring in. Overwatch League became a thing. It's like, cha-ching, I guess I'm an esport now.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to Overwatch case specifically, like it could have had potential, but the thing is that Blizzard themselves were so unaware of what they actually wanted with the game that when like the esport came out, it was personally in my opinion it was fine, like as an experience, but it obviously suffered from the fact that it was way too rushed out and Blizzard did not know like what audience they were actually catering to.
The thing I wanted about it is that mechanically Fortnite is such a complex game, right? Where
Well, yeah, when it comes to building, yeah.
Yeah.
and I kind of lost my train of thought because you guys are talking, right? But like, actually, I feel like if the production value for Fortnite tournaments increased and maybe a hardware side on how servers are run to make these narratives something better, it actually could promote to definitely like better pro scene. But just the way I'd say Epic is handling it is like letting all the competitive scene die down. So all the casual fans that want competitive
Right.
experience have to then go to content creators who are also pro players, who might
Mhm.
not be pro players but are more competitive than they are or are higher skilled, right?
Mhm.
It's sort of like you follow your like it has all the ingredients to be a good esport, I'd argue, but they're just not letting it gel together, not seeing the like small flaws they need to, right? So like, I mean,
I think.
the only yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you finish because I don't want you to lose your chance again. But yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say is like the whole narrative of the Fortnite World Cup was these like 4 or 5 new players that were like absolutely tearing it. Were like Bogo, the 300 Thieves players that I forgot
I
all
think
their names
was Saul
right
one of
now.
them because yeah.
Psalm also did really good, right? The narrative's
Ray nearly did good. Lost to
Ray
Luca.
was very good, right? Like Ray's won a ton of cash cups here at IIT. Yeah, but the thing is, if all these elite players are playing together, the production should have a narrative set up so that these star players or star players, right? Because you never know if someone's gonna pop off, right? Have something set up so that outsiders can see it. People who already follow the scene can be like, "Oh, wow, this guy's improved," or "This guy is like absolutely on fire," right? I feel like that is sort of like a letdown that Epic hasn't even been fulfilled.
I think that's also why like a lot of the big names you see in Fortnite are are just generally content creators, right? Or like professional players
Mhm.
that have moved to the content creation side. Because
Right.
the esport, the actual competitive aspect of Fortnite has kind of gotten worse and worse over time. For so much so that's not really like worth any of them to actually go professional. And like you see this a lot in other esports too, where people will outweigh like, do I want to become a content creator or do I want to become a professional player, right? And a lot of times in the end, like money is like one of the huge factors, but for some people, like for Shroud, for example, one of the big things was like, I'm just not motivated to practice enough, right? But when it comes to Fortnite, I feel like most of the people are like, the scene itself is not that great, and there's not really a lot of money in it. I mean, there probably is a lot of money in it, but only for just like the really really top level. So that like it's just more worth for them to become content creators instead.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's a very important point that you raised right now, which is the streamer content creator versus the pro player, which is kind of where I want to drive this conversation towards, is like the competitive side of esports. Like as players, all of us have competed as players in for ITE, which arguably is a collegiate esports scene, right? Like you can argue whether it is an official esport or not, but like we've competed in tournaments, we've competed in some kind of competitive aspect, and we've gone through at least a little bit of um, how like a pro player would do it, and to a lesser extent because we're juggling multiple things at once. It's not just like, hey, I can wake up, rise and grind gamers. It's more so I rise, I study, I grind, then I fall asleep and pass out inevitably, unless you're Matthew, who does all
Doesn't
of it and doesn't
No
sleep,
sleep
runs
gang.
off like
No
5
sleep
hours
gang.
of sleep. 5 hours
Man.
of sleep.
Man's
So
a monster.
yeah,
and
that's kind of where I want to drive to. So yeah, so like going off what Awesome said in terms of content creation, I think Fortnite allowed for a lot more content creation because they saw that as a main source of like a main source of like expanding and growing their game. Because ideally, what you want from that side of things is
Epic.
you want your game to be well known, right? You want your game to be more well known, regardless of whether it can be competitive or not. It's more so
Epic.
how many players do you want, like your player base,
Yep. Epic took advantage of that feeling when you make friends online and just play with them, right? And then you like would always log in and
and cross-platform. They took
play with
advantage
them,
of
right?
cross-platform.
Yeah. But like earlier in the Xbox 360 days, if you were by yourself and you found like some fun people to play with, they're your online Xbox friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think they encompass that perfectly because the way they cater to casual players, the way they make it so you can, it doesn't matter what skill level you're at, what you even want to do in the game, because there's people that like to do challenges, like to just play the game, the actual game mode and win, or people just want to play one-on-ones, right? Like people play creative or customs, right? There's everything that there's like a small environment for everyone that wants to play the game the way they want to play it, and
Right.
I feel like that's the road they went compared to like what we're gonna talk about now, which is like the actual competition, the actual like playing the game and starting off from maybe like those Xbox Live friends where you're just playing by yourself and then you're like, oh, we're pretty good. You want to play it again? And then for the other line, they're your team or your friends, and then you just play whatever game mode you guys enjoy.
Right. Which I guess it brings me to a question that I want to pose to all of y'all, pose myself, which is, how's your experience been as a collegiate esports player? You can
I
go down
choked the
the
natty.
He could have had the clout, and then he got denied.
All right,
Man.
well, we'll start off with Juan then.
I
Serial.
am not here at the moment.
You're not here. You don't want to talk about your competitive experience.
I
as a
I will go
player?
last. I will go last.
All right, let's do Ryan because Ryan hasn't talked in a while.
Yeah,
What do you mean I haven't talked? You mean Greg?
Greg or Ryan, either one of you.
Either
How do you
one.
want to? Just one of you start speaking about.
It took me a second to get back up from my chair. I'm
Mr.
old.
Mr. President.
All right, Mr. President. How's your competitive experience been?
Terrible. I mauled constantly.
I mean,
That's a good
that's
thing.
a given.
Is
That's
that
a
a
given.
meme answer or like a serious answer? Because
That's a
I
given.
can't tell anymore. Because it's a
Meme.
given that you mauled it. I've heard you mauled. All right, 2 years ago when you guys are doing like a CS tournament, and I literally hear you get off from your chair. And you go, "We can't lose those pistol rounds," and I go, "Okay, man, Greg, I understand that. Can you please calm down, sit in your chair?"
No.
Because I know
Yeah.
Jackson was like, "Dude, that losses the game," and I was like, "I don't think it did, but it definitely affected mental in terms of like yelling."
No, it
Because,
actually did. But
like,
so Yeah, so I'm a very emotional player. That I feel like most people know that at this point. When I'm playing, I get swingy. Almost every time we take a timeout, it's because I'm molding and I need to come. So it's a very like emotional experience for me when I'm playing on the competitive teams. But that really only applies when we're genuinely like having a competitive season. I'm a lot laxer the less competitive we are, which is to say, I've only had like last year's team. I was not quite as high strung as I was for 2 years ago, which was a team that really had like high competitive aspirations. Last year's team, to be frank, didn't have the same level of play, so I went a little easier. Sometimes I'd still mauled, especially in competitive games or in games where I was like popping off, but we lost anyway. I was like, but you know, um, it was fine for the most part. The overall, the competitive experience has just been a lot of molding, a lot of molding. But it's overall been a pretty good experience, you know. Always enjoyed playing as part of a team, like learning to work within a unit and be a leader in that sense.
That's fair. How about you, Ryan?
I would say being in playing in that competitive setting is like a whole new experience compared to just like playing the game like casually or even just playing it by yourself, and it requires like a whole new skill set in a way because it's almost like you're playing the same game, but it's like you're playing it in a way that's like fundamentally different because you are being introduced to a new environment, and it like goes back to the whole thing, and I've harped on this multiple times of like the difference in like like solo or like rank play compared to playing in like a like collegiate or esport environment.
And even then, going from casual to competitive does have its own like upgrade because it's worth more.
Yeah.
For our elo points. I say elo, but we all know it's worth those plus 30s. Ooh.
It's pride. It's realistically pride.
It's part of that whole thing that I've like said multiple times of like MMR SR just being numbers. Like it's the same thing with like how you approach the competitive environment versus how like just playing the game on your own time is.
I would like to quickly mention that Illinois Tech Esports does not endorse the opinions of this man claiming SR is just a number.
Okay, man.
Yeah.
Okay,
Look,
man.
I mean, for the most part,
Someone who
it
has
is.
grinded the game, grinded a couple of games, I'll definitely say that SR is just a number. Like,
But for the most part, it is. Like MMR and Dota or SR and Overwatch, all it does is tell you your likeliness to win a game. Like that's all it tells you is your capability to win a pub game. Because the thing is that pub players are incredibly abusable. So the skills you learn to be a good player in pubs don't really translate well into the competitive scene. Because in esports, your job is to synergize your own lineup to play around like player strengths and coordinate the most optimal way to play your lineup. And it's also considering your opponent's lineup and what they're planning to do. Meanwhile, in pubs, your job is just to abuse stupid people.
That's true. That's very, very true.
In pub games, it's pretty much about how can I abuse the fact that this player's bad? How can I punish the enemy for being bad? How can I make up for my teammates having a bad draft or whatever, or being idiots themselves? Like these are the skills that you learn to play comp in solo queue.
Fun fact about playing pub games: there's a 100% chance that everyone in the server is brain dead, including you.
Including the person playing.
Yeah,
You're all brain dead. It's a fact.
100%. That's a fact. I think that's a fact whenever we walk into a pub game, right? Like anytime we go into like any kind of main game, like when it's competitive and there's like a number on the line, for some weird reason, we all just either brain dead or we get like we care so much about it.
every solo queue adventure is just another destination that you're on for the SS moron.
It's another uninstall.
Like you are the captain. You are the captain of the SS moron in every time you play solo queue, and it's your job to lead your teammates to victory.
That's fair.
And you think you're playing at a
They don't
disadvantage,
listen.
but what you don't realize is that the other people on the other team are just as stupid as you.
That's the facts.
All right,
So-
Austin, how about you?
For me, generally, like the what do you call it? Competing and for collegiate has been a pretty good experience. I think for me, like, and I mean for you too, Poen, but like both of us haven't had like I would say the traditional experience for collegiate because we weren't only players, but also like coaches and managers and stuff
Yeah,
like
player,
that.
player coaches.
Yeah, yeah,
We were
and
more
so
than
like
just players at one point. We were like
yeah,
doing the captain's
yeah.
jobs and stuff. It was
I
fun,
feel
kind of
like
fun.
other than competing and stuff, competing and everything, there's a lot of aspects involving or what do you call it while playing collegiate that I feel like made me develop like certain other skill sets or made me use like certain other skill sets, and like that kind of helped me grow as a person. And not to mention, personally, like I'm not really someone that like goes out of my way to talk to people in class and stuff, but I think like being involved in esports kind of just like let me get or like I got to know a lot more people just from like getting involved in collegiate, I would say, and kind of helps that competing with them just makes you like closer with them. But yeah.
That's fair. That's a tearjerker response right there. The Bible thumps in chat, please, for that. All right, Greg, you were about to say something before I cut you off and sent that off to Awesome. So
You're
We're,
fine,
we're
dude.
still we're still all describing our
Dropping Bible
collegiate
thumps in
experience.
chat, man. It's not a big deal. I was just gonna continue memeing on SR and
I
Elo.
see.
with
I cut it
what-
off because I was like, I'm done with that. We've lengthened that joke far enough. But yeah, I do agree with Awesome on that. Like my competitive experience, because I want to save Juan's for last, because he's gonna mold for all of us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've molded a lot. I'll be honest. I mold a lot. I do take like
I
when it
haven't
comes to
modeled by
competition, I
myself.
take
It's
it
not
very
not
seriously.
really, like obviously in games sometimes and then
Yeah.
in like teams, but like it's usually at myself
Mhm.
when I'm by myself.
It's usually like it's not at my I don't know. I'd say like at times there have been times where I'm like, why is my team doing so bad? But then most of the time I'm like, why am I playing like utter like an utter noob or something like that? I'm playing complete garbage right now, and
Word.
that's where like I mold, and that affects my mental. And for the most part, I think competitive games like being part of a competitive team has helped that. Like has helped me handle pressure a lot better. Has helped me manage my time a lot more. In the sense that I do have to attend these practices. I have this commitment that I have. I need to make sure that I complete everything else that I need to do outside of that. So, be it studying, academics, my social life outside of that, I'm like,
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
wait, we
yeah,
can
yeah.
just
You have to have a certain degree of discipline to approach it in the appropriate
exactly.
way.
And I think the competitive aspect of a video game has helped me with the discipline compared to the casual aspect. The casual aspect has made me more like aloof to certain things compared to the competitive aspect, which has made me more like aware about finding my mistakes, areas of improvement, areas of opportunity, stuff like that. Stuff that I would use in industry when I'm done with college, right? Like I've talked to like some of my professors, and like in my last year, like last semester itself, I had a class which is basically they gave you a project which was very similar to like a project management class. It was like building a plant, right? It was like prototyping a plant and like designing a plant, and that was very intensive. But then at the end of it, it was like, hey, how well did you work in a team? And I was like, wait, I worked decently well in a team. It's not because I've worked in a team well before, but this time I've communicated really well. I'm pretty organized. I'm fairly organized with my time. I manage my time really well. I had my commitments and I stuck to those commitments, stuff like that. And that was like that helped me like build the discipline. So I guess the competitive aspect has made me more disciplined compared to if I was like in high school, right? I play like League for 13 hours a day or some shit like that. Like it'd be
that's what I wanna hear.
something garbage like that, and I'd feel like I wouldn't feel bad, but I wouldn't feel the best. Like I'd just be like, what am I doing? I'm like my parents would yell at me for being addicted to games, and now I'm like in a competitive team, and I'm like, if I play this game too much, I will get burnt out. Like I recognize that compared to back then where I wouldn't recognize how to deal with my tilt or how to deal with my maul. Now I recognize how to deal with that, which is literally alt F4 the game and take a break,
Yeah,
and, like,
yeah.
walk away from the computer.
A lot of it is like as you were saying, how you approach the experience is like what your mental is, what your perspective is, because it can really affect how the experience, how much you enjoy it.
It also, like, in a way, it also helped me branch out in terms of being able to handle different personalities, because I'll be honest, the Overwatch team is always filled with personalities, and it's always fun to deal with, like, the various personalities that come in, because we've had people who were, like, super shy at first, like Kevin. He didn't used to talk that much, and now he's like
Now he's demanding we spit on him as every hour.
Okay, man, that's just an inside joke. The world doesn't need to know that. You can't expose him like that. But
No on that one.
so we have, like, Kevin who's like that, and then we have Matthew who used to always be outspoken, but, like, now he has this sense of maturity to him now. Like, when like he's talking about the game and, like, talking about improvement, there's a little bit of maturity that's added when he's talking about it. It's not like meme here, meme there. And then there's the same thing with Ryan. Like, he used to be riding the bench 2 years ago. Now he's, like, main roster. One of our key players that we rely on in terms of communication, one of the strategists in the game. And then we have people like Milton, who genuinely not used to speak and decided, hey, you know what? I'm being forced to speak. I'm yelling at the top of my lungs. Like, stuff like that, like, has really, like, you can see how people change in a competitive environment because they're kind of cornered to improving. Like, you're kind of cornering them to improving. And I see how Chad is just talking about winning and losing, and
Turn losses into something. They don't have to upset you.
yeah, like,
That's
for
what
me, like, now when I play ranked on my own in Overwatch, if I lose a game, I try to see if it's my fault or not. If it's my fault, I mauled at myself. If it's my team fault, I mauled at nobody. Like, like, it was just not. It was not a good. Unless it's something where it's not a good experience, like, completely, where I've lost 10 games in a row in a night, or, like, 7 games in a row. I just, I need to get the losses out of my system, right? So I just go on a loss streak, and I'm like, okay, I just try to not let it affect my mental as much. And I think dealing with toxic people in a competitive setting, and, like, having the ability to, like, detach your personal feelings when it comes to, like, an argument related to the game, makes it a lot easier in terms of the mental side of things. Like, your brain tends to handle those situations a lot better when it comes to, if, let's say, like, Ryan and I, we played on a team for like a year now, we get into an argument. At the end of that, we settle our argument, but, like, in the heat of the moment, like, we'll yell at each other, but then it's, like, all good. But then after that, we'll, like, bring it back up and be like, so what the fuck happened? And it was like, okay, this happened. Like, oh, okay, my bad. Like, we immediately recognize and, like, reconcile with each other, just so that we're not
It helps.
constantly toxic with each other. Like, we're not, like, at each other's throats, or, like, we feel like this person's bad, they're performing bad, I'm gonna put them down even more. It's more like, oh, you perform bad, I'm gonna pick up the slack.
It helps. It helps to be indifferent to that which makes no difference.
Yeah. And that's, like, a philosophy that I've been picking up, and it's just, I don't know, it's made my competitive experience a lot more fun. Like, even when I solo queue, and, like, the competitive environment, specifically the collegiate competitive environment, has been, like, a weird one, like Awesome said, for me, because, like Awesome, we started off as coaches, like analyst coaches at first, then we started filling because people were, like, unavailable, and we had to, like, do emergency filling and stuff like that. And then we decided, like, hey, we want to improve our own game, so we improved our own game. And then we got to a point where we're like, okay, we can still take a back seat. And then we realized, like, taking a back seat wasn't working for us anymore, so we started to participate even more. Like, I think up till now, like, Awesome, Ryan, and I have participated in, like, 5-6 tournaments together or something like that, because we had Midwest Battle for the Midwest, we had the Open Division, we had
We did it only twice.
we've done a couple now
Yeah.
where we've all participated together, along with Matthew. So that's like now we're like pretty close. We can probably bend at each other and be like, huh, that's fair enough, and like laugh at each other's maul without it, coming across as offensive, I guess, for the most part.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like we're not like genuinely toxic to each other, right? Like we're not like we don't
It's more like
think
it's
that
more
each
like a
of us are
friendship thing,
like,
right?
yeah, it's like even if it comes down to like it coming across as toxic, it's like more like, okay, I will settle it after and stuff like that. So it's just kind
It's
of
like it
nice.
stays in the game over
Yeah, it either stays in the
spreading
game, and if
out.
it comes out of the game, it usually means like someone needs a break. And like sometimes I'll just be like, I need a break. I need to reset mentally, and I can't keep playing the game, so I'm just gonna take a break. And that's something that like a lot of competitive players need to recognize, especially at the collegiate level, is once you start tilting and once you start getting toxic, what you really need is a break from the team. Because when you play with the team very often, like we did, which was like 3 to 4 times a week, or like almost every single night. Like I played with Matthew and Ryan almost every single night and over winter break. Like at some point, there needs to be like a break, right? Just so that you have that space between you guys, so that you know exactly like, okay, I'm not dependent on this person. I'm good enough because I'm good enough at the game. Despite SR being a number, it's like more of a reassurance for people. Like the numbers are a reassurance for you because it's a pride thing, and we all have egos, and we use that as like a gauge of our egos.
Yeah, but that like it would be more how do I describe this? It's more appropriate if that ego comes from recognizing your value in your gameplay
Yeah,
rather than the external source that is the number that is shown on your like game career profile. And
so yeah,
it also can lead to a lot of tilt and underperformance when you keep trying to go beyond your ability and ascribe value to things that you have no control over. Like if you just focus on like the things that you have agency over, like your own gameplay and such, and like what you do and how you approach situations in the game.
I also feel like toxicity comes from a point of frustration that you can't
Yeah.
really vent in an online game because no matter what you type, you will sound
Like an
very,
asshole.
very, very, very.
In
Goes
in
back.
layman's terms, it would be part of my language, but like an asshole. Like you would
Yeah,
not
Yeah,
sound
it all-
kind of.
if you're playing,
It all goes back to that like having perspective and context of the situation.
yeah, if you're playing a real sport and you see someone like take a contested fadeaway three instead of giving you the ball, and you're like underneath the basket by yourself, you're gonna be like, "Yo, dude, please look at me next time." Stuff like that, right? Like if
Right.
like the ability to communicate is there, and you're gonna be a human being about it. Obviously, tempers might be up, or because you're exhausted and stuff like that, or you're
Yeah.
just in the heat
That's
of the
why I think
moment,
like
right?
esports is like a solid 50 to 60% is a mental game. Just like keeping your head, like keeping your cool in like a competitive aspect, like either in competitive like ladder climbing or in a team environment, keeping your cool is like 60% of the hurdle of
And
the
also
obstacle.
just knowing how to have fun while also
Yeah.
like playing your best.
And like that 40% is like the mechanical skill, and like you mold it yourself at times, but having that 60%, that mental battle with yourself of like, oh, I'm underperforming, I need to perform more, and you add pressure and you tilt because you're not performing as well, or like even if you're performing well, your team doesn't perform well. You need to have like that balance of like, okay, my team's not performing well, I'm gonna try to perform as best as I can because that's what matters right now.
That
is-
60% is how OG was able to win TI8 and turn it into a Cinderella story.
Mm-hmm.
and TI7, right?
TI7
What's TI7?
TI7 was Team Liquid.
We should
Oh.
also put to
Oh yeah,
Oh,
TI 8 and 9. TI 8 and 9.
Yeah,
just,
OG is TI8 and 9 back
yeah,
to back.
that's how like the 60% mental battle was just like we're just having fun with the game, and I think that's how like the Overwatch team has improved over time as well. Like the only reason why I'm bringing up the Overwatch team is because that's my competitive experience.
Yeah.
That's how we've like gone through most of these tournaments. Like we win and like sure we lose and like we go on like horrible loss streaks sometimes, but we bounce back and we make it a competitive game because we take that loss as like I got pushed
As
down.
a team.
I'm gonna get back up. All right, time to like steady myself. So if I get pushed again, I push back. You know, um, that kind of deal. So that's why I don't know. It's always fun. It's always like at the end of the day, it's like we had so much fun. Like even the battle for the not battle for the Midwest. This most recent tournament that we had for Overwatch, despite losing like 2 of our players in the semifinals due to emergencies, we still had a lot of fun. And we like, even though we lost, we were just laughing about it at the end. We're like, dude, this is like the unluckiest thing that could happen to us. It's nothing we have control over, and like we accepted it pretty fast. Like we weren't like, God damn it, if only like these people didn't go through emergencies. It was more so like, you had emergencies. Like, what do you want us to do? You know, it's out of our control. And so that's one of the few things. And now,
But then you also gotta let people have their clout when they got it, when it's rightfully deserved.
exactly, like Juan right
Not me.
now deserves
me.
this clout right
I don't
now
have clout.
for answering that question about his competitive experience at ITE.
I mean, my competitive experience starts way before I even started playing League. I always played traditional sports, right? I played soccer, basketball throughout high school. Was goalie for Team Bogota, and if you guys don't know, Team Bogota is Colombia's capital, so I played like at the district level until my parents were like, "Yeah, you can't drop out of school to play soccer when you're 13." So they put me back into school. Then I switched to basketball, and then would always play competitively. Would play AAU or the equivalent in Colombia, and then that's what it always translated when I was playing games, right? Because like I said, I started in Halo Reach, and like after like 3 months, I was already playing at like local tournaments, right? Because I was 12. And my favorite like I've always told you guys know the story, but like the stream really doesn't. But it's like I showed up when I was 12, and my mom was just annoyed at me. She just didn't want to see me because I was every time I'd go past the game, so I would be like, "Mom, I need you to register me for this tournament. I need to play at this tournament." And it'd be like every time we went past the GameStop. So finally, she's like, "All right, I'm gonna go do groceries. You go. I will pay the $5 for you to play this game." And I show up. Everyone's like 20, 18. All these people who played Halo forever. And then the store manager's like, "Oh yeah, he should be done in like 30 minutes. You're fine." And then, I do my thing. I had to borrow a controller from the store. I didn't even have a headset, so I was playing with like screen audio. Everyone was like annoyed at me. My my voice was like 10 billion octaves higher than it is now. Uh,
The squeaker.
I played on like 14 sensitivity because my fingers, were there. And then that's sort of when I realized like I like just competing in general, right? Even if I wasn't the best, I feel like that's part of the fun I had. And eventually I placed second and I lost. My random, who was 21, was probably carrying me, but I like to say I did work, but it was always fun. And that sort of like carried on to like when I played Call of Duty. And I know there might be some Call of Duty players in the chat, and I just transitioned into like the ladder play and then ranked play on like game battles, which is like early like how COD MOG started sorta.
Mhm.
It was like a face-up equivalent of Call of Duty where you kind of just made 10-man lobbies because people wanted to play competitively. Then it all went downhill when I got a PC and played League of Legends, and
Worst decision of your life?
I would
Hey,
say
you
it
got to the
wasn't.
finals of the D3 collegiate like CSL.
I
So
would say it's not the worst decision because those like 2.5 years that I played were very fun, and like the fact that I got to play collegiate the first year was just pretty fun. Like, because I always went into the mentality of like, oh, I want to build a team, and the fact
and
of
you
like,
did, didn't you?
yeah. So when I started, well, I wasn't good, and I still don't think I'm good. So we kind of just banded together the 5 people who were all bad, and we're like, we'll be bad together, and no one will.
Bless up Scotty, bless up J Mars, bless up
Bless up
Conspirogly,
Leo. Bless up
Leo.
second Leo, who also transferred out. Mittens, everyone. And then like I sort of realized that I also like the competing like as a competitor, but I like the managerial and like team environment creation, and that's sort of like what I'm doing now, if I can. Basically, that's it. Too long didn't read. Started off as a squeaker. Now I'm slightly worse.
Now
Imagine
you're
ever being a sweeper.
cracked.
I wish.
Yeah, we should probably move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah,
That
I
is
mean,
definitely something
you guys
because
anyway.
we've using our experiences we've talked about content
I
creation, pro
I mean,
player. We've
I have
also talked about like
questions.
because we're amateurs and then compare it to like professionals who like play for
Like,
8 to 12 hours a day.
but like, I always have questions. Like, what, like, what's your like pet peeve in like a comp game? Like, what, like, you can't just like talk about
Silence,
experience.
silence,
Personally,
Okay.
personally, I
silence
feel.
for
I
me.
mean, silence is one thing, but I feel like the exact opposite too. Like honestly, it becomes like as time goes on, it gets harder and harder for me to just like ever justify flaming
Talking.
teammates. Like I don't understand why people just do it at like what do you call it? Like flame their teammates now because it's just like why turn things into yeah, you're already facing like 5 or 6 people on the enemy team. Why just like add another on your own team? You know?
Yeah, don't make more enemies than the 5 or 6 you're already facing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can
I
assure you that
that it's like what you said about like science being your pet peeve. For me, it's the opposite. It's when people don't shut up
Yeah.
and they keep like talking and they're cluttering comms. It's like
I think Asim's pet peeve is more of like if you it's like talking about a fight right after like the fight is lost or like in the middle of a fight, right? Like why didn't you do this? Like arguing in the middle of the game instead of talking about it after.
I
I
mean
think that's
that's
one of
definitely
Austin's pet peeves because that really ticks him off and
that's
I mean,
definitely
because
one of
like
the
from
things.
I
scrims and stuff,
genuinely,
he's like, dude, talk about it later. Shut the fuck up right now.
Yeah.
Like he goes into that, and I'm like, okay,
What are you saying, Juan?
I mean, maybe it's because League is a way different where you have to evaluate the fights that you take and why it didn't work or why it did work, right? Because League isn't. Hopefully, the games you play aren't decided by one fight. Please,
yeah.
hopefully. God forbid
so,
you
sorry,
play.
Overwatch is not that game.
God
Overwatch is
forbid
another
you.
game.
God forbid you take one fight in 50 minutes and lose the game. Okay, but ideally, like people, like what I don't like is like when people can't identify the job they have to fill, or even
That's
ask what they need to do, right?
Yeah.
Because I wish everyone was as talented to just be. Alright, we're playing five carries that could just absolutely demolish everyone, but the working as a like grow as a team thing that like if people don't try and grow into the team, it's kind of like what frustrates me a little bit, but it's not even like frustration, it's like I can't see us getting to the next level, and that's why I always
Mhm.
strive for that like team growth and sort of like team trust,
I
if
think
that makes sense.
yeah. When it comes
Sure.
to what do you call it? Kind of going back to earlier with like the whole thing with like Overwatch, like the thing that could just I feel like a lot of times we don't need to talk about the like or stuff. People in general just don't need to say stuff that's like unnecessary, right? And this kind of goes into like both the collegiate
Cluttering the
like
comms.
yeah, just like the collegiate aspect and like just the like just playing ranked games aspect. Like it doesn't you're wasting your time and you're also just like you're not helping by doing that, right? And so
Uh,
it doesn't I'm like outside of the talking between fight stuff, like when it comes to just like people and like in rank just like trash talking people, like why does it help you? No. Like it literally
Yes,
does
it has
nothing.
trash
all,
talking
all
ranked
that all
helps.
that all that
Yeah.
time that you're wasting like saying
Hyping.
unimportant things
Oh, if
and
you're the
just
one
like
trash
blaming
talking, not good.
people.
You take the trash talk, good.
Yeah.
Like all that time that you're like spending like just like doing that dumb doing stuff like cluttering comms like being a dick or just like simply like talk or like saying irrelevant things That's less time that you're devoting to actually playing the game.
Yeah, and trash talk like like before and after games, like especially in professional esports, right? Like trash talk like before and after games is great, right? It's just like it's fun banter and like it creates like good
I will
storylines.
question you.
But but like in the middle of the game, it's just like especially when like you're in a game, it's just really annoying. You know, like it accomplishes nothing.
That's fair. Like, yeah, I see that. What about you, Greg? What's your biggest pet peeve?
There's not like a single thing that sets me off more than anything else. So my like when people I think I go with when people claim that they know something, but what they're claiming is wrong. That annoys me outside of games too. But when someone says like, "Oh, like the play you just made was really bad," like if it was actually a bad play and I was making like I made a mistake, I'll be like, "Okay, you don't need to tell me that," but like you're right, so I'll move on with my day. Or but if they tell me a play I made was bad because it didn't work out, but it was actually the right play, or not necessarily say it to me, say it to someone else. I'm like, why are you bothering to speak right now? Because firstly, this isn't productive even if you were right, and secondly, you're wrong in the first place. So like you're not only already harming the team by being toxic, you're also harming the team because you're trying to spread false information.
Right. That's
Do you
fair.
guys, do you guys think that sometimes the way people talk online is like how they would like express themselves in real life, but it just sounds worse because it's all lied and you might have misplayed or they think you misplayed?
I think a lot of times people that
Like if there's no voice comms in the game, right? Because League is a very you
Type heavy.
you write 10 paragraphs explaining why not freezing is horrendous for the game and how we should forfeit at 10 minutes.
well like
You can,
FF15.
honestly, if you don't invade, you might as well FF then.
I feel like
Every game.
If you're not
Level 1
playing
at the red
30
buff.
meta champions,
I mean, it's kind of like social media in aspect where people just kind of have less of a filter only because they can just hide behind like their screen or whatever. Like they're
The
obviously
screen, yeah.
they're obviously not in person, so like they can just like become as degenerate as they want to be.
it's also because they're approaching strangers.
Yeah,
Like they're strangers approaching other strangers.
exactly.
It's that anonymity that like lets people get away with some of the degenerate things they do.
Yeah, I definitely say people are less considerate online than they are. Like I genuinely don't think that people would be as toxic if you had to see the face of the person you're talking to.
Yeah,
And
well,
also, like a lot of the people that like are toxic as hell in League, like I can almost like wager that a handful of them, you talk to them in person, they wouldn't even look you in the eye. Like
Mm,
they're not socially conscious enough to like be able to even look you in the eye.
yeah,
That's for sure.
I feel like that's just an assumption based on a stereotype at this point, though. Like I'm not.
That's why I say
Yeah.
a handful of them,
Yeah,
not a majority of them, because
Yeah.
there
I
are
think some people
are
do have the
that are
audacity to like give their phone numbers out. Because I've dealt with a League player who literally called one of my friends up and started trash talking them in real life.
Hey, those Xbox 360
Oh, the
voice
video
messages,
message, the voice
voice
message.
messages,
Yeah.
man. Hey, if you lost the round 11 search, all three of your teammates were sending you something.
Dude, I got that on Halo when we were playing
The-
Halo Reach MLG mode, and I
it was the same thing on PSN, PlayStation Network.
Yeah,
'Cause
it was like I didn't do well on a CTF game, and this guy was screaming at the top of his lungs, so I just left. And then this guy sends me a voice message, and my dad's like standing near, and I just say the B word, and my dad just stares at me and goes like, whatever." Like I'm pretty sure my dad had respect for me. Then he's like, "All right, my kid's doing good. He's standing up for himself."
He's not getting cyberbullied.
Exactly.
I'm kind of getting
He
cyberbullied.
didn't turn off the screen this time. He stood up for himself.
God,
Okay, that was a bad joke. I apologize.
awful.
That one
Awful.
flatlined.
Man, God.
Hey,
Get out of here
No,
with
no,
that bad
it
joke. You're teetering on your second time out already. God.
Dude, Juan, you've already been banned once tonight. I don't want to have to ban you a second time.
Exactly. All
Fair,
right, with
fair,
that, I
fair,
think
fair.
we can move on to what the
The
business side.
money aspect.
The money,
the
dude.
money
The
talk.
money is where
cold
all the
hard
games are at.
I'm gonna
This
be
is
real.
why people invest in competitive esports. This is why
This
venture
is
capitalists come through. Stuff like
Big
that. So
this
I want to.
this
Hard
is where
facts.
manufactured esports comes from.
Yeah, that's why I want to talk about like organic scene growth versus franchising, like a hands-off approach compared to a hands-on approach, like how Valorant's
Greg, get
doing
in
it
here.
right now.
Get it out. Get it out.
Tech
It's been 10
esports,
minutes.
like,
Go ahead.
I want to make it very clear. So, Illinois Tech Esports, we're a student-run organization. So we're getting into the business side of things, how businesses work, and Illinois Tech Esports, from that business perspective, only care about
It
the money.
is
There's
like
zero
not
emphasis
right
on anything else. We're only in it for the
Zero
money.
emphasis on player mental health, on
None
burnout,
of that. None of
on
that. None of that.
this is all.
We don't care. Only
This
care.
is all with sarcasm. Please take anything that our president says with a
Your
hint
your
of
well your well
sarcasm.
being your well being is of the least most importance. It's all about that wallet.
Okay, let's not turn into PragerU. All right, let's not turn into one of those PragerU videos. Okay, I don't want to get banned. I don't want to get canceled. Episode 1 of our podcast.
Episode 0, baby. I'm getting very late.
Too late. Juan's cancellation
All right.
isn't spring to the rest of us.
Hi guys.
Like I said,
Well, okay. Man,
like
dude.
I said, let's talk about franchising versus organic scene growth. Like how Overwatch and Call of Duty have gone into franchising under Blizzard Activision compared to organic scene growth and let's say Valorant and Counter Strike. Let's talk about that. Let's do it.
I
What?
think if
I
we're
also
on
feel like we
that,
should
difference
take
in
a
that.
real quick pit stop in the actual competitive side of things, of like how like it actually works. Like what and like what if you're a professional player? What if you compete at a high collegiate level? What if you're an amateur? And sort of go around the like
I can tell
everything.
you that in terms of a collegiate level, a high collegiate level, universities, big state schools are able to do that because they have the funding for it. But the what if you are a pro basically means we are trying to answer the question of the lifestyle of a pro, right? That's basically what you're asking, right? You get income, you get sponsorships, you are meant to be a content creator on the side when you're not on the job, which means you are not playing the game professionally for the team that you represent, even though you are representing your team at almost at all times, which is why you have players with a certain sense of decorum when streaming, because they're still representative of their organization, they're still representative of their sponsors, and you've seen sponsors pull out based on players' behaviors online. Like XQC is
And
a
results.
famous answer, like a famous
Yeah.
famous
Case.
example where he got really toxic and all his sponsors
I mean,
fell through. He was just like, you know what, like we don't want to work with you, and like the org was like, okay, you're very toxic right now.
Yeah, when 100 Thieves first tried to enter into the Counter Strike scene, the first team they signed, they dropped that team without them playing a single match under the 100 Thieves banner because they were so unprofessional.
yeah.
That team was a finalist at the previous major when they signed them. They were so unprofessional they refused to work with them.
I mean, I think a lot of times, like teams when they sign players, they're not necessarily expecting them to be content creators, right? Like they want to market them, but they're not expecting them to be content creators. But I think if you're a professional player, especially at the top level, like it's one of the smartest things you can do to become a content creator, because once you're done, like actually competing, you have to have some sort of like
All-through
roadmap.
plan.
Yeah, yeah. You need like a roadmap to move on to like something else, right? Like you can't. It's a lot. Some of them become casters, right? Some of them become like
Mm-hmm.
desk analysts and stuff like that. But like,
Pros
yeah,
pros go to GMs or coaching
yeah,
positions.
yeah. But
Yeah.
generally, the easiest way, because you're already a pro player and because you're so marketable just from that, like
Your exposure.
yeah, like just going into content creation is just the easiest thing you can do, and like just profit off of that as much as you can, and like set yourself up for the future.
like
also,
Nate
it's
Shot.
a-
Nate Shot
it's-
used to be a giant. Like he used to be the COD OG.
Right.
Now he's a content creator, true and true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's-
His brand is huge.
Mm-hmm.
He founded 100 Thieves, so
Cash.
Yep. He
Fortunately,
did.
their counter
And I mean,
joined 100
yeah,
Thieves. So
like going on like 100 Thieves too. Like they've also historically been like a team that like hasn't focused too much on being the best, but more just like marketing their players and their organization as much
Yeah.
as possible, and just like trying to make money off of that. But it was just like
and they've had their ups and downs, like for sure.
Yeah,
Like,
I
the
know
whole
recently-
Medios thing and like benching Medios and
Yeah.
how Medios reacted for League of Legends scene, and then the 100 Thieves roster for Valorant, and then now, it's going back up because they're marketing it really well in terms of like, hey,
We want to
we-
compete.
we
Yeah.
debated
We wanna
you.
compete.
I think-
We now want to compete. We got
Yeah.
Hiko as captain. Now we got
Nitro.
Captain America,
Right?
Nitro.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nitro.
signed to 100 Thieves playing for a roster.
Then he left Counter Strike. Never
Yeah.
stopped being upset that he left Counter Strike.
And I mean, this kind of ties into like how you actually compete, right? And I
Mhm.
mean, I like to make an example. I always like to make an example with traditional sports, just because I still play traditional sports for IIT, right? But
Mhm.
the time you invest to getting as good as you get in a video game is probably the same that you put into playing a sport. The only difference is like you're just developing the set skills for your game, right? Or the set like game sense that you need to become a pro, right?
Mhm.
And like as always, there's always gonna be like the roadblocks of putting in the time, right? Like if you go up a level, right? Like let's say you play high school where it's like more hobbyish, and then if you compete on the side, that's more on your time, and you look for people that also want to become as serious as you in it. Then once you get
Right.
collegiate, where you have responsibilities of playing in the team environment, of playing by yourself, so that your team doesn't need to work on those set things, sort of have parallels in traditional sports, right? Like
Right.
it's really hard for a team to be really good if people don't play by themselves. Like it's like if you never practice your threes, what are you gonna do when you're open in the game? You're gonna break that three, right? If you can't make a bounce pass, you're gonna get benched,
Yeah.
sort of. But
Mhm.
I mean, that doesn't really happen, and there's not a direct parallel to esports at this moment, right?
Right.
I mean, in terms of bench, like, because like practicing in esports is like much different. There's not a lot of drilling. It's more just like you're either
Maybe for
practicing.
your esports.
What was that?
I mean,
Your
how
esports.
can
I
you?
mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
but
drilling,
go-
like drilling in the sense is like if you were to drill something for
Basketball.
Overwatch, it'd be like, yeah, from basketball to Overwatch, it'd be a Genji combo,
yeah,
right? Like you learn how to do it, and then you got to get better, and then the better Genji players adapt that knowledge to like the
that
situation,
that's very
and then that leads to your aim too, right? That's what I mean,
Yeah.
like drilling,
But that's
right?
not like a drill that you do
that's
like
very
for
individual.
team practice, right?
That's
It's like
Yeah.
individual stuff that you
I
have to
mean,
improve on your
team
own time,
practices,
and
team
like you're almost
practices, you
expected
don't
to do. You're expected to
exactly.
know that.
And team practices, at least for real sports, I say real sports, both are real sports. For at least like IRL traditional sports is when you're in a team environment, you're practicing team specific things. So you're practicing your game plan, your style of lacrosse, basketball, soccer, football,
Mhm.
hockey,
Yeah.
ping pong, right? And that's the same thing in esports. And some people on the outside looking in do not see that as like they don't see it as even a sport or as something competitive. Like my parents literally did not think that League of Legends was something competitive. They just honestly thought I had gonna say mental issue that I was playing this game at all. So
I mean,
Wait, are we?
my parents just thought that I was addicted to video games and like addicted to screen like
yeah.
technology, and I was like, yeah, I am, but like I really like
But like League
playing
though, have
League.
you played this game, Mom? They're getting minions. Oh my gosh.
My CS needs to be better.
Who isn't addicted to technology at this point?
I probably should have clarified then. I guess I meant like you don't.
Maybe I didn't understand you, Austin. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's fine. But like, what do you call it? Like drilling in the sense that like when you're practicing as a team in esports, a lot of times like scrimming is for I would say a lot of games like scrimming is like one of the bigger things that you do. And like games like I know games like CS and Valorant in particular have like where they go. I forget what it's called, but like you go into like an empty server and then you just practice like set nades and executes without like having an
Defaults?
actual and defaults without having
No,
like an actual opponent. But like
yeah,
I forget what the
we
what
call that dry running
yeah
executes.
that's what it is. Like you have stuff like that. You have stuff like that, but I feel like in traditional sports, stuff like that is a lot more prevalent than it is in esports. You know?
Yep. But I feel like one of the main things that people don't see on the outside looking in. Like they don't know that. They
Yeah.
just think we're playing the game with 5 people, right? Like they don't see that you're working for the
Yeah.
team, you're working on the strategy of the team, how hard the game is in itself, right? Like I tried to send my dad down to play League of Legends once and he didn't make it through the tutorial. Right?
Dude,
Like
so
and
when I realized there were people who can't complete the tutorial in that game, I was like, what?
well, it's not like he can't complete it. He just like
I mean,
thinks
Is bored
it's
of it.
hard and he gets bored, right? It's obviously not his cup of tea. But then when he sees me play, he's like, okay, you like, because he tried it once and he knows how hard it is, and he's like, dang. And then he asked me, right? Like, he's like, are you doing good? Are you winning, son?
Are you winning, son?
Well, when he always,
And you're like, no,
he'd always,
Dad, I'm throwing.
he'd always ask that after I lose. I'd be like, and then he comes in, he's like, are you winning? And I'm like,
What do you think?
yeah, I'm
You
mad.
already
I'm
know.
so happy.
I-
I'm mad.
You already know he's
Dad,
griefing you. He's griefing you.
fact that you haven't won.
But then like they took the time to like I think it changed with my parents. I don't know if you guys it's changed for your parents, but it changed when I played I forget or like I just went to like a LAN like a small LAN in Colombia and like as a solo player and he saw like a really like 200 people lined up for it and he kind of saw how like wow these people aren't even professional. They're just doing it like if it was a pickup soccer game.
Yeah.
No, I am feeding Tekka Killer. I always feed.
Yeah. So
Yeah. We need to
we said
yeah,
that like sponsorships, the content creation side,
Merchandising.
like merchandising.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Merchandising is a
Merchandising is a
part of
very key component to the marketable success of an esport.
it. Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
true. 100 Thieves, great apparel company because it has some like
C9.
really good like streetwear designs, right? For 100 Thieves, like Overwatch League is currently moving towards like the streetwear aspect for its merchandise, rather than its like classic jerseys. Like if you look at like 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't more so like like comfort wear or streetwear for all these different teams. It was more so like I got a jersey, I can sign it, like IIT jersey. This is merchandising. It was essentially what merchandising is.
I can pull up my
Awesome,
Rocky Game
I-
jersey. That's one
I,
thing.
I think Awesome in particular had like a certain pet peeve with one of the jerseys.
Stuff like this
It's
too.
in for
This is
Overwatch.
merchandising,
Hmm.
right? This is signed by a pro player. Well,
Oh, was it the Fnatic?
A lot of
no,
Oh,
this is the Thresh
no, that's the Thresh
plushie
plushie
that I got signed by
from
Tyler
Riot.
One,
uh,
right?
a lot of like I kind
Oh God.
Shout out to Plu who got
It's
his
cutting
forehead
out,
signed.
dude.
of wait.
Oh,
No,
oh
I
yeah!
think
Shout
I was
out
just
to
pulling.
Flu who
I
got
was
his
just pulling up my
forehead
thing.
signed.
Shout
I
out
was
to
just
Plu, the biggest forehead here.
But what do you call it? I was just saying that like I like it when games like lean into their universe and do merchandising with that, just because like
Hmm.
it's very easy. But what Ryan was saying, like the pet peeve of the Overwatch thing, it just pissed me off because they didn't like do any like they weren't actual real jerseys. Like they didn't even have like the name tag on the shoulder and stuff like that. So like when you do the merchandising,
It was like
you
a
have to do
kit,
it right.
sort of, right? It was
Yeah.
like a kit.
Well,
Okay, yeah.
they had the name on the back, but they didn't have the name on the front like they
Oh,
do
okay.
like their actual jerseys do. And like
Hmm.
I don't understand why they did that. But like when it comes to merchandising, I feel like in esports especially, the merchandising kind of needs to be good off the bat because otherwise like you burn people for the like in the future like really early on. Because I think in terms of merchandise, like a lot of people are more wary to actually commit to buying something just because of like a stigma or because of how expensive it could be sometimes. Like I know Overwatch League like jerseys in particular are just like so like are insanely expensive for what they are, and like I would want to buy one, but I can't because it's too expensive for what it is.
No, you're right. Like Overwatch League jerseys are expensive, which is why I don't have one.
Hmm.
I mean,
I
some of
would
the
have gotten one.
like the other like other. I mean, I want to say other games, but like most of the games just have like the same few orgs. But like the other orgs, like they have really good jerseys, especially the Team Liquid ones. Like the Team Liquid Marvel ones are like so insanely
Oh,
cool.
those are clean. I
Yeah.
got like their I got the Liquid Marvel streetwear stuff.
Yeah.
So I have like the full sleeve Spider-Man Marvel Liquid like t-shirt, and that's
Yeah.
honestly one of my favorite t-shirts
Yeah,
There's
that
a
I've gotten
and like
related to like esports, like merchandising wise.
This also ties into like something very important for the business aspect of esports, and as much as like all us tryhards and diehard fans and competitive players want to like say no, but casual players make the game what it is, and the fact that people play it and just want to play the game without competing sort of helps branch out into this merchandising thing where people just like the game for what it is. Like
yeah.
they just like the game for the characters they play, the times they win, the times they lose, the funny moments, the sad moments, right? Losing losing round 11 in search, losing in
Matthew's choke.
overtime, all that stuff.
Matthew on
So,
choke.
Matthew.
oh yes, that makes me sad just by you mentioning it. Oh, okay.
Alright. Juan's crying, boys. We've broken him. We've
I'm,
broken him.
I'm kidding. Matt's choke out
But yeah,
is
but like
better
with
than
all this
some of the
merchandising and
choke
stuff,
outs
and
I've
all this
seen.
casual play, like where does most of this profit come from? Like, is
Oh.
esports a profitable industry in terms of just the money it makes?
So similar to how the big name sports, the major league sports make money, and usually it's branding and the entertainment value they bring, right? And if you make the comparison to the NBA, the franchised league, my bad, I brain farted, is essentially the better the team performs, right?
Hmm.
The more exposure they get, and the more cuts of the profit the whole league gets.
Mhm.
But then, because that then drives competition and drives people to look at the top 0.01 population that plays the sport or plays the game,
Hmm.
and then that consequently makes other people want to play because they're like, oh, I want to be like him, right? Or I want to play Zed like Faker, or I want to be like Tactical, right?
I want to be
Stuff like
like
that.
Tarek.
Yeah,
Of
then
course,
him.
everyone wants to be like the peanut brain.
No, actually, everyone wants to be like Stewie, pushing smokes and dinking heads.
Oh yeah, don't worry, I do that and go one shot.
I think everybody wants to be inspirational.
Inspirational.
Don't do it.
Oh, baby.
I feel like
Yeah, which,
And no
Oh,
one
that's
no one
good.
says
No.
no one
Do
says
not
inspirational as Matthew.
and I think like with all this various like memes and stuff, and like the marketability of the personalities, right? They like and like the personalities of the players themselves. That kind of helps with generating more value for the company. Matthew get timed out. Well, so like I was saying, like with like all the various different personalities and like the
I'm on it.
and like the way that they I guess they brand this player or this personality, um, they are generating more awareness of their brand towards a casual audience. Like the content creators, the streamers that you see that meme a lot, but are signed to an org, are usually the
That
ones that
organization attention.
yeah, they give the org attention. Like Nade Shot with
And
100 Thieves, he's bringing a
absolutely.
lot of money to Nate to 100 Thieves. Courage as well, like signings like Courage JD or
Nico Nicolo
Nico.
on the TikTok side.
Exactly, like they're bringing in different audiences to a like bring awareness to their brand. Like even the mob, right? Like the mob is known by the internet, like the Twitch internet community, as a bunch of like
Mulder.
memers, just memers. They're just genuine like memers, like from like true and true. And then the 100 Thieves goes, "We've signed them," and then everyone goes, you're signing people who meme, and 100 Thieves goes,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
and that's why a lot of people now know what 100 Thieves is because they got that brand exposure, and I think using the esports personalities themselves, like even Liquid, right? Like the founder of Liquid 112, Steve, he started off as Curse, and like that's not that great of a name, but they rebranded to Team Liquid because he took 100% ownership, like he took a majority ownership in the company, and then he got people to invest in it, and then he signed. They already had like decent rosters. They had like a really good Dota roster. They won a TI. They had like a they've had a very solid league roster like, for the last few like last year or something like that, right, Juan? Like recently,
yeah,
like they have a solid league roster. Their Counter Strike roster
I mean,
blew
you
up
have
once they signed the right players.
I want to make like another comparison now that Matthew brings it up in the chat. It's just that the main difference in like the business aspect of esports compared to traditional sports is that the money isn't. I mean, there is money in player transactions and winning, right? Because you will always get money from that, right? Winning a major, winning TI, winning Worlds, winning NALCS, LEC, wildcard region, right? There's always money in going that route and being competitive and successful, and also being a player, right? Because you're salaried, you have all the commodities of being signed to play a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, like I said, the entertainment value that is given and that they throw out is not like you see. Oh, it's not like, oh, LA is so popular because they're losing. No, then like that's happened because they're known as winners and that people love them because they won before, and that the people there are entertaining. They can relatable people. Well, relatable, but like storyline wise, right? All of this entertainment that makes people want to resonate with a brand
It's
is
like LeBron
like,
James and like his story, like the whole thing where he says like I'm a kid from Akron, right?
yeah,
Like it's
basically,
very
yeah.
relatable. It's like, oh, I a kid from Akron, didn't have the best like upbringing. Like it wasn't like like he wasn't privileged to like have a bunch of stuff, but he
It's
grew
like
up to become a pro NBA player, and I think that's the relatability that you're talking about, right? With the
um
esports players.
phase transitioned from like sniping, which was their original content creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their content creation in Call of Duty was sniping, montages, and overall like pub stopping. And then they obviously picked up their pro team because they've always had it. But they saw a market where, and they saw sort of what I'm trying to explain of like, if they are marketable, relatable, and have exposure to the people they want to show their stuff to, they are going to have success, right? And that's what's happening, right? At like people see all these FaZe Banks videos, all these like different, I forget all the FaZe people, like Agony,
Adapt.
Ape,
No,
Adept. I don't know if he's still in
adapt.
it.
It's not adapt. Adapt, because adapt is a
Adapt,
female
and then
streamer.
their COD team like FaZe Simp, poor guy. His
That's
name was
Censor.
his name was
Like
Simp
he used to be censor,
before Simp was used horrendously.
and then
You know?
before that had
yeah,
meaning.
Juju, yeah, Temper, like all these guys.
Exactly.
I get what you mean. Like they've expanded their portfolio. Like FaZe is now a well-known content creation. Like that FaZe tournament in Valorant, their commercials were just giant flexes on everybody. Like all the other
Yeah.
orgs. Like we got Lambos, we got Ferraris, we get to fly in private jets, we got beach houses and look at our mansions. It was a giant flex. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And people like buy into it and be like,
I mean, that's the thing, right? Because
I like it.
FaZe
Like what I see.
FaZe was also able to like tie in because they had like the Nissan sponsorship in that too, right? But they made it into like a FaZe commercial at the same time, and I feel like FaZe is like
And
even
the
though
G Fuel sponsorship.
yeah
They were one of the first few to have like their own G Fuel sponsorship.
yeah
Right?
Hey
like
G Fuel,
personally
respond to my email, please. Please.
personally, I'm not like I mean, this is just personal preference, but I'm not a huge like fan of the FaZe branding, but I do think that they have like branded themselves very well and very clearly to like a certain archetype that they're just like able to what do you call it, build it into their sponsorships and everything so well and it just like resonates with the audience usually, right? Like you just see like a sponsorship like, oh, I know that this is for FaZe, like without a doubt. You know?
Yeah, like credit where credit's due. I think
Yeah.
FaZe has
And
done an
like,
amazing job in branding themselves and
How-
like giving themselves that brand exposure.
yeah,
Each team is different, no? I'm sorry to cut in, but each team is different.
yeah, like
Yeah,
I feel like FaZe personally though has like been one of the ones that like makes their branding the most like distinct and easy to tell, right? Like I'd say 100 Thieves too, but I feel like for the other teams, like
He cut out. He's dead, boys. It's
Here,
over.
once more.
I don't want to say they feel very samey, but they don't feel very I don't know how to say it, but like they don't stand out as much as
They're
100
not as
Thieves.
unique as
Yeah,
like
as 100 Thieves or
they're,
FaZe.
you can't set them apart like TSM
Yeah.
Mm,
compared to T1, right?
mm.
Yeah, but
They're
it's like
kind of they're kind of similar in the sense that like they're really solid like gamer teams. And then you look at FaZe compared with 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves kind of casual, kind of chill, content creation.
Lifestyle.
it's
Content creation, like one of them is focused on style. FaZe focused on like they've had like solid rosters at times, and like they do have like their mark on esports. But I think their overall mark on esports is they've set themselves apart from these standard brands, like the original few brands like TSM, T1, Team Liquid. They've set themselves apart
Rivalries.
as like
Also,
who they are.
like another key difference to point out is that except if you're like Overwatch or Call of Duty, where you have homesteads for each team,
Mhm.
right? Like representative cities,
Mhm.
people don't resonate with where the teams are because the teams are usually where the servers, right? Like League of Legends teams
All
are
of
in LA. Everyone who plays Valorant right now is either playing in Chicago, well, near Chicago or near LA,
It's
right?
LA right
Or
now.
Texas.
Call of Duty, everyone's in Dallas,
hmm
stuff like that. So
Like unless it's franchise, like franchise in the sense that it's
Mhm.
homestead
People-
based, yeah. Which I'd like to give props to Blizzard Activision for doing that, like branching out into like a homestand thing to make it feel more like a traditional sport. Like, oh, I can support the Chicago Huntsman for Call of Duty because I'm from Chicago,
Yeah.
or I
Yeah.
can
Team-
support the Atlanta
team-
Reign because I'm from Atlanta. Like,
Yeah.
I
teams
like-
but
teams
it's
in
just
Dota
not
do that to
there.
a teams in Dota and I think CS as well do that to a lesser extent.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
because it's separated by region, no?
Yeah.
But
So
I'm going to argue right now that there is a more developed tier 2, and tier 3 scene where it's not needed.
yeah. So for Counter Strike, people tend to be like pretty like region
Heavy, yeah.
supportive. So like you'll support if you're Australian, you support your Australian teams. Chinese support Chinese teams. Europeans tend to have a team from Europe they like. North
French
America.
or otherwise.
North America also likes European teams.
No.
No.
And
North America goes with like Team Liquid, Furia, stuff like that, right?
Genius.
No, not Furia. Furia
Well,
is
not Furia.
It's Brazil,
Evil
right?
Genius? I don't know.
so yeah, and then South American team fans will support the Brazilian teams because they're the only relevant ones. If there was another country in South America that was relevant,
Nope.
yeah, they're
Negative.
not happening. Juan, you gotta fix that.
Greg,
Um,
if I go pro,
No, there are a couple other teams.
I'm taking you
I
with
will-
me.
Yeah, but
I will
the-
donate my first salary.
Wait, you taking him to Brazil?
No, if Juan goes pro, he's taking Greg with him.
It's true.
He's bringing Greg to Brazil?
Yeah.
It's happening, dude.
Greg,
I'm
I
getting-
catch you going to Brazil.
I guess I'm getting coronavirus.
You're gonna get more than coronavirus.
Speaking of coronavirus, we'd like to talk
Everyone
about
use
our
the
Hawks
donation
for
link.
Hawks.
There's
Foundation,
It is
we'd
100%
like to
not a
thank-
scuffed promotion.
We'd like to thank
Greg,
the
finish
Student
your-
Health Initiative and the Hawks for Hawks people for I guess
reaching out for us,
reaching out to us to
getting this
come-
church going,
make this
spreading
church-
awareness. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Very good.
no, but I will say though, like I will when I'm watching pro CS tournaments, I will support typically the North American teams, but I don't really have like a specific favorite team, and I haven't for a really long time. Whereas when I'm watching basketball, I'm diehard for the Memphis Grizzlies. I'll like do anything for the Memphis Grizzlies. All about Memphis Grizzlies. So
Yeah, if you say anything about John Morant, Greg
if you
bans
say
you from the server.
that's a fact right there. If you
He does more than ban you from the server. He bans you from the arena too.
if you try to tell me Jaren Jackson Jr. is not one of the best young bigs in the NBA,
Who?
you're banned. You're banned. Juan's banned.
Well, that's strike three. Well, that's strike three.
Oh!
You know?
Oh no,
I
we lost him
Is he
Yeah.
gone?
again.
I banned. Of course he's gone.
Unlucky.
No, he's okay. I like him.
Yeah, but I don't have like a team that I'm like super diehard for like that. Yes, like I kind of support 100 Thieves, but like not that much. I just think Gratisfaction has a nice mustache. That's really the end of my allegiance. Like it's honestly that simple.
I mean, I will say.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, finish.
No, I think I'm done.
Oh, okay. I will say like
We've got like
When-
30 minutes left. I just want to let you guys know.
yeah.
That's
when,
why.
Yeah.
when it comes
What do
to
you have running?
when it comes to like Blizzard, the way that they franchise it, I do personally like how they've gone for like the city markets, just because it makes it easier for teams to actually market it. But when it comes to like the actual franchising itself, I kind of wish that they didn't like jump the gun so much on how they what do you call it? They I feel like they accepted too few teams for too high of a price rather than doing too many, what do you call it, like a lot of teams for like a little price, because it feels like right now, because of COVID and other factors, it just makes it harder for like the teams to actually compete like properly. And I feel like that's also one of the biggest like issues with franchising as a whole, where like you have a just aren't like able to compete with each other feasibly due to like either like resources or just how the org is managed, and you kind of have these teams just like taking up spots for no reason whatsoever. You know.
Yep. I agree. AK sort of like, I was gonna say the Phoenix Suns, but then playoff Suns were kind of really good,
Yeah, they went 8-0 in the bubble, man. That was nasty.
and then they still didn't make it. But
Unlucky.
I'm sorry. Memphis.
I'm thinking like the Shanghai Dragons, right? Weren't they, like,
Dragons. The worst
they are-
team.
What was it? 0-3?
Arguably the
to-
worst. They were the worst team in esports
To be
history.
fair,
it's like CLG and LCS, right?
yeah, to be fair, they're the best teams now. But I feel like when it comes to like in a tournament format, right? Like that would have been. It's still good in a franchise format that you have that storyline, right? Like going from like the worst team to one of the best teams. But like in a tournament format, that feels a lot more meaningful because those like each of those games have a lot more impact, right? But when it comes to like a franchise model, the games feel like they have a lot less impact because they have lower stakes. And due to that fact, like people just aren't as connected to the storylines as it would be in like a tournament format.
Right.
I mean, now I have a little like thing we can all kind of like weigh in on, sort of like a question, and
Mhm.
like, how do you guys see, like, when I think city line franchising, I think what happens underneath that, right?
Mm.
The pipeline to get to the upper levels. How does esports, how does Overwatch, how does Call of Duty, how does League of Legends, how does Counter Strike, even though Counter Strike is a separate case because it's already been developed, and I don't think anyone's gonna revolutionize that until probably the next CS comes out, if it comes out. And it is,
Please don't.
yeah.
There's no need for another CS for a while.
And so
Yeah,
like,
man, this is gonna be the century-year-old sport. Let's be honest.
so the best like thing I can compare it to is like, you know how in Korea, at least LCK has like their like apprenticeship teams, right? Like there's a SKT, there's T1, right? And then there's like their academy league, and there's underneath there like 2 or 3 other teams that sort of funnel talent up the ladder if they're good enough. How does that happen here for our esports? Because I still feel like that is an untapped market, and there's so much untapped potential, right? Like, imagine if there's a way to figure out how collegiate esports could be branded and made so that it is treated as varsity athletics.
So I want to take the examples of a couple of universities out there. UCLA have tied themselves to Evil Geniuses. So tournaments are actually sponsored by Evil Geniuses, with prizings being given to them. TESPA has reached out. Like we are like a TESPA chapter at Illinois Tech, so we do get some prizing from them, like for giveaways and stuff. But when it comes to like actual sponsorships, it has to be through homegrown tournaments. Like
Mhm.
UCLA recently, like the UCs do Overwatch
They're
tournaments every.
in-house tournaments.
No, it's not
too.
in-house. That's the thing. It's invitationals. So you apply to play in those tournaments, or like you send an application. They
Yeah, okay.
contact you to confirm because who knows what will happen by the time the tournament comes around. You might not have a roster by then. So it's more so like, hey, we're interested in this tournament. They get like interest forms out, and like the problem is that all these there's like a network of collegiate like in the higher ups, I guess like top 50 to 100 schools, they're in like their own closed off network where there's a sort of gatekeeping because the competition's quote unquote too easy, where um they don't give out that information freely, right? Like you have to hunt for it because it's not marketed as well. Like you have to go through the university's Reddit, like the subreddit page, or you have to go through like people you know from these various universities and stuff like that. And so that's something that like networking comes into. So like Harrisburg is Harrisburg University is hosting a tournament soon, and then I know that UCLA hosts a tournament like for League for like Overwatch,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
like the UCs usually host a tournament
That
over
is
summer
yeah,
or like
yeah.
over the semesters outside of the official like collegiate tournaments. Like you outside of ULaw, like outside of that circuit, they'll pick like a weekend and make it like a weekend tournament thing. Or if it's
Sort
a
of like how
LAN,
the
they'll even
Teemo
make it a
Cup is.
LAN. Yeah, they'll make it like the Midwestern LAN, like stuff like that where you network. Like that's why in college, a lot of people are like, oh, network. This applies to esports as well. Like if you network with other universities, even if it's other players, right? Just by getting to know them and being friends with other players from other universities, they will tell you about opportunities that rise up your for your collegiate team to gain competitive experience. And what better way to get better at at like a certain sport than to experience more and more competition, so that when you do get to like a certain point, like Maryville, they did so many competitions that now they've moved up. They're so good that they moved up a tier in Overwatch from collegiate to contenders and are currently in contenders. Like
I
their
was
B team is
yeah,
like
yeah.
this it's the second best or the best
I
team
was
in
I
collegiate
oh,
Overwatch.
I I like all that points, but like what I was trying to get at is how do how does every high school, right? How does every college, how does the U.S. Like let's say all the U.S. schools or U.S. colleges create something similar to the Illinois High School Esports Association, right?
I think
How does that happen, right? Because Illinois, I mean, fun fact, there's only like 7% of Illinois high schools that do not have an esports team or a club,
right.
right?
Hmm.
How do you guys see the future of esports if it can be tackled at all the levels possible? High
Uh,
school, collegiate, semi-pro, pro.
I feel
I
like
think we need to normalize esports.
I think
You would have to normalize that.
yeah.
Mhm.
I feel
Bring it.
like go ahead.
I think that's the thing. Like, right, that's like what we're wanting. That's like part of the question, right? Like,
How does
how do
one?
we get to that normalization, right? Like, because if you guys talk at our campus about it, people are like, "Yeah, okay, I know what that is. They play video games. They're kind of good. They're decent at it. You know, he's decent. You know, he shoots well,
I think
All
in
right, Austin,
terms
what
of
but
did you want to say?
stuff
in
like that."
in terms of normalization, I feel like over time that will slowly happen just because I think right now a lot of people in our age are at least exposed to it and understand what it is and don't just like scoff at it, right? So like
Yeah.
once more people like in our generation start becoming like the prominent members of society, I think esports will become more and more normalized. I also think though that like high school and collegiate esports becoming like very properly developed in an actual system is like the perfect thing for a lot of these these esports, right? Because I feel like right now, personally, it feels like to me, tier two esports for a lot of games is like stagnating a lot, right? Because I know like in League and CS, the issue with tier two esports that it's really hard for talent to break into it because, sorry, I should say for NA League of Legends and CS like overall, like it's hard for tier two talent to break into like tier one because there's a lot of old talent in there, right? That just like ends up staying for too long. Am I correct or no?
Not
That
for
is correct,
CS.
but that is because the region is bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
I mean,
but
for CS, it's also like harder opportunity wise to move up because there's like a certain level at which you need to perform, and like no matter how good you are, you're expected to be at that level, and some people can't make it. Like that's fine, but like tier two is still popping. That's the thing, right? For
well,
CS,
I'm not
like
saying
tier
that.
two, tier three, tier four is still popping off. Like still good sponsorships and stuff like that. Like
I'm not saying that.
Meanwhile, in Dota, tier 2 and tier 3 is a barren wasteland.
I'm not saying,
like
yeah, but
similar with Overwatch.
I'm not saying that it's not necessarily profitable, but I feel like a lot like tier two isn't necessarily like a developmental like learning ground as much as it should be, right? So I feel like high school and
Oh,
collegiate
I see what
sports,
you mean. Okay.
high school and collegiate sports becoming like or esports becoming like normalized and becoming like properly set up would be like perfect for all these esports that actually have some sort of developmental ground. Because I think right now a lot of these a lot
There's a
of
lot of.
yeah, wait, what were you saying, one?
I was just make a little chirp in that like there's a lot of players stuck in the G League, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they're never gonna play in the NBA, but they're still in the G League, and that's their profession,
yeah,
True.
yeah.
right?
Like what?
And
Like
yeah, but like it matters like whether it's sustainable or not,
yeah, because
because that can make a huge difference.
sometimes like a lot of especially early on in an esports career, like a lot of people get like they make their way up into the ladder and then like they become noticed there and then they go into like small like very small orgs and they keep competing until they make like a bigger name for themselves and like moving from org to org until they like get signed to tier 2 tier 1. But like I don't really consider that as like a developmental system more than just like a path to pro, right? Like that's just like the way that people, like a lot of people actually like end up taking their route to become a professional player. But there's no active system in place to actually develop people. It's just that's just the norm, and so people go for it.
I mean, in traditional sports, the path to pro is you being better than everyone else, right? But
Yeah,
there is like
At the
all
high school and
stage
collegiate level, though,
there.
it's usually at the high school and collegiate level, and then you get like drafted into tier one, compared to esports where you have to
There
climb
is no
through the ranks
development.
regardless of like what it is. Like you can't
There,
just go from
yeah.
tier three, like college level, and then get drafted into like tier one CS or tier one
I
Overwatch.
agree.
Like
But
you,
there's like the development of you playing at that level, right?
yeah. Um,
Like, okay, there's someone who always like who played is like the hustle player in high school, right? That person might never go pro, but if they did their job and developed what they needed and their path in life isn't to go pro, well, they could still play at the collegiate level and just work on that skill set, right?
Yeah, they can still be semi-pro.
Because the development is still there, right? Like the
mhm.
pipeline is there, and it'll naturally filter out people.
yeah.
I feel like
There is no natural filter in
it
esports.
might be a little conceited for me to say this, but I feel
Okay.
like Illinois Tech Esports does a fairly good job in terms of cultivating our collegiate players to like stay invested in esports. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like even after they leave IIT, you still see people who are interested in staying connected to ITE or help out in some way. Like Elvin, he founder of ITE, right? Still connected after graduating for like 3 years or something like that. Like
We also got a
he's been, yeah. Amir recently graduated, still is in contact with ITE. Um, Alpha at times. still in contact with IT. There's like some people who used to go to IT, then obviously due to differences in philosophy kind of broke off, but there's still a lot of people who would like come back. I know that I would probably come back, like stay in contact with IT after I graduate because I've spent a lot of time at IT, but I think we do a very good job. But I think the big thing that we're trying to get at is the way to, I guess, develop high school and collegiate esports is to have more exposure to it. So doing more shoutcasting streams like we did today, make like spreading the word out more, like having people follow each other's like school Twitter accounts and like getting the word out so that what we need to do is be one giant unit, right? Like we are not,
And it's not going
like,
to happen overnight either, too.
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna take, it's probably gonna take like 5 to 10 years. Let's be honest. Like we start, like we just have to start building a network where we have people,
I mean,
like,
go ahead.
you know, we get talking with high schools and we're like hosting tournaments like for high schools, and then through that that's like a scouting ground for college, and then from college we can like expand our network, like talk to, you know, Nerd Street Gamers or something like that. You know, like uh stuff like that, having those business connections will help us normalize esports in terms of a collegiate scene that is a path to pro, like a true path to pro, right? Like a traditional esport. And this could also be semi-pro, and it's just like cultivating that just means that there needs to be more investment by universities, by high schools, and allowing people to just host tournaments, because schools have the space. Like Illinois Tech has been really good to us in terms of they gave us the esports center, which is hugely beneficial and has allowed more people to like actually think about esports. Like a lot of people literally came, like a lot of people that I talked to, a couple of freshmen, they were like, "Oh, I came to IIT because the esports center was cool." Like that was like one of the good
Yeah, like
things.
the school and like making this investment into like the esports scene is very beneficial for it. Like not just for our organization, but for the university as a whole. Because
yeah, and if we perform,
it helps attract more students to like.
yeah, and if we perform, it sets like a level. Like we bring in
especially
better people, like more skilled people, like better at their game,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So
it's like a feedback loop of like helping foster the esports scene here, as well as fostering like more students
Okay.
to want to like come to school here.
There's also like you have to consider the cultural aspect of it too, because I feel like
Yeah.
in high school, high
I was
school
gonna get
sport,
to that.
yeah, high school sports, like a lot of people like go to watch a like a lot of people that go to high school go to watch a high school sport not because they necessarily care about the sport, but because it's like a social event, right? But like with esports, it's kind of harder to do that because especially now, like there's no like in-person event, but because like for a lot of people, the like just going on a stream and like spectating that isn't as like interesting.
Interactive.
Yeah, it's not as
or
interactive.
interactive, yeah.
Yeah, it's not as interactive. It's not really a social event, right? So like
Hey,
that's a big benefit that traditional sports has that makes it like that like it makes it harder for esports to like bank off of, you know.
I agree.
100%.
And that's fair, but I do think there needs to be like investment into like esports in general, and then for in terms of universities and high schools, just like investing in it, and then
Like the scholarship.
at the corporate,
Yeah.
like the scholarship, but at a corporate level, right? Investing into areas where people can actually go to such esports events, live viewing parties, streaming collegiate matches, and making it so that you have like a watch party for those collegiate matches, right? Making more spaces, like in Asia, it's a very big thing. Like internet cafes are a very big thing in Asia. As where I'm from, like internet cafes are a very big thing, and that's where you usually meet more people who are interested in esports, and that's where you usually go hang out after like school or something to watch a game. Like if there's a live game happening, that's like the traditional esports feel
Yeah.
that I think that I could get. Like I have that in Asia because it's normalized there. It's like, okay, video games are a thing. It's a big spectacle. Some countries compared to others, it's more in some countries like compared to others. That's because of the culture they build around it. and the success they've gained. And so like the corporate success just needs to be amplified in the US, I feel, in order for the collegiate and high school to gain more recognition as an esports scene. Because I definitely think that there's strides made in the right direction in terms of, partnerships like big esports orgs partnering with universities. I think that needs to grow more, where like orgs aren't just partnering with one university, they're partnering with almost all the universities, and they're partnering with each other to host tournaments and like signing rosters and stuff like that. It's I can talk a lot about this, and it's great. Well, I've been talking for 4 hours, so
3, maybe, or 4.
like
Four
before I lose
provide.
my train of thought, it's basically comes down to the industry investing in collegiate and high school scenes, and the high schools and the university itself investing in the industry in terms of cultivating more players, like encouraging more people to say like, hey, esports is a path, is a proper path for a career in life. It's a proper way to live.
Or it's a
Content
hobby
creation,
that
it's a hobby. You
it's
build a
hobby
lot of
that
interpersonal skills. You
you can
build
do
a
that.
lot of stuff.
It's something that you can get very passionate about.
Yeah. What do you call it?
Wait,
Go ahead.
I was gonna. I forgot. Go ahead.
Sorry.
It will come back to me.
I was gonna say that like I feel like esports needs like some sort of centralization, because with like collegiate sports specifically, when you want to follow like a specific school's storyline, right? There's some like they're gonna be on TV at some point, right? There's like you can watch it, but I think with collegiate esports, one of the big issues that like not every single like week there's a game on, right? Like collegiate leagues will only start streaming games until like the very end, like the playoffs. So a lot of times you don't really like connect with the
Get
team.
involved.
Yeah, you don't connect with a team until it's like the last stretch, you know. So that's like one of the
storylines going like that.
yeah, it's
I mean,
one of the
similar
biggest
to March
weaknesses of collegiate.
Madness, correct?
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, March Madness helps those smaller teams that don't have a bigger following, but they make it
it's
even
kind of,
more
I
televised.
understand what you mean by centralized, though. Like what you mean by centralized. It's kind of like the NCAA and how it centralizes
because
all of the collegiate traditional sports, and from there it develops into pro players, right? Like Div 1 NCAA, you can go into pro. Like basically you're in line for drafts, like from Duke and stuff like that. That's how you get into the draft for the NBA, for the MLB, for the NFL. Like it's from these tier 1 like NCAA. So I think we need to have something like that, but not for all games.
I should clarify that, like, I don't mean for all games, but like a lot of times if you want to watch a school play, you have to go to that school's Twitch channel to actually watch it, right? So like rather than it being on, let's just say CSL, right? CSL has a lot of collegiate leagues for different games. Like collegiate, like CSL doesn't stream like the games, right? Like IIT has to stream their own game until playoffs, and then CSL maybe streams it.
Yeah, which is why I like smaller like organizations like Game On that we worked with.
Yeah, they
streamed all the games.
I also wanted to add that esports in its like mainstream cycle is very, very young compared to like how developed traditional sports have been. And like the only comparison would be like lacrosse and how big it's getting and how mainstream it's trying to become.
Right.
So like it still hasn't had its like natural due process and its struggles, but I feel like with the modern like tech age, it could accelerate super fast.
I would say that at the moment that esports is also a lot more volatile, especially depends on which game we're talking about, because some are more stable than others, but not by much compared to traditional sports. Like,
go ahead.
Like Dota, for example, part of the reason why the tier 2 and tier 3 scene in Dota is like almost non-existent is because of how volatile the Dota Pro circuit as a whole generally is. Because team salaries are almost entirely like made up of earnings from the yearly international. Like their entire effort spent throughout the year is just trying to make it to that TI and getting top 8. Like all the other majors and stuff is like that's like secondary.
Yeah, that's which is like a very like inherent thing about esports, right? Because other than like the format of a specific like league, you also have to consider the fact that there's always going to be like new balance patches and there's always going to be new games that come out, right? And so that's always going to add like some form of like instability to it. Because for sports, like it's not like, oh yeah, like like all of a sudden the ball is now a pyramid, and then also there's a new like better version of basketball coming out that people might like be more attracted to watch or play. So like in terms of that sense, like traditional sports has a much like easier like way of building a foundation to actually like build upon these things. But with esports, because like you have to consider all these other like aspects, it's probably harder for all these collegiate leagues to like come up with like something solid to actually build off of, you know?
Yep,
Yeah, that's very
absolutely.
insightful. And unfortunately, due to time constraints,
We
that
must wrap this
we're gonna wrap
wonderful
up
talk up.
this episode, and we haven't done. I don't know. I don't think we've done it enough justice. I think we've done it as best as we could right now, right, guys? Like we've done as best as we could in terms of
If the chat has any
hopefully giving
questions
an insight
they
of
want to
what
ask us right
esports
now,
is, and like if there's any questions that anybody in chat has regarding us and our thoughts on certain things.
or
But I
like just
quickly want to
questions
wrap
in
up
general.
like the topic itself and how
How
the
is chat doing?
the different. I guess
You have a chat. Chat exists.
I'm gonna.
Chat.
I want to quickly just like kind of tie the three together, like with the business, with the consumer side, and the competitive side. It's almost a feedback loop, like Ryan just mentioned. Like if we invest as consumers, if we invest into the business side will invest in the competitive side. The competitive side will give us consumers what we want. It's a full cycle thing, and I think we just need to um, I think we just need to do that because we, as like the next generation of people, to like we're gonna be the people to normalize esports because we grew up on that. We are like in the middle of it. Like the generation older than us, like the current pros, they're gonna be the ones that are gonna be like advising us, like, hey man, you should do this to grow this esport. Like you should do that. Like I'll give you guys a shout out, stuff like that. But I definitely think that there's still a long way to go in order to normalize esports and so that it universally becomes understood what an esport is, and we can all just agree that like esports is a pretty cool thing, and like it's a very in-depth topic, and it's not something like, oh, isn't it just playing video games, like Juan mentioned at the start, right? Like it's more so like there's this aspect of playing video games, but it's a passion. It's using various life skills. It's building interpersonal skills that you usually don't see, stuff like that. So it's going to
Ball
be
is
very
life.
interesting.
League is life.
Yeah. Cloud is
Exactly.
League,
life.
Like ball is
League is
life,
a
league is
lifestyle.
life, Overwatch is life,
Cloud
stuff
is
like
life.
Mauled is life. So
Fair.
full
life.
circle, the Mauled cast, Mauled is life. And here at Illinois Tech Esports, we do believe in the Mauled. We
Respectful
encourage
manner.
managing the Mauled, but we don't discourage promoting the Mauled, despite
Everybody has their own little
How-
misadventures on occasion.
exactly. We all will have our
Manner
misadventures.
just like
Ryan put
every
it,
day, but you know how it is.
yeah, Ryan put it beautifully. Like we have our own misadventures every other time. But with that, hopefully you guys gained a little insight on what we thought esports is. If you liked
To
what we
get
did
everyone
here,
started.
please do subscribe and let us know through our Discord or through chat. Pester the Gumbies who's streaming next. That the Maldcast was really good because
We also like
we'd
to think
appreciate that. This was our first episode of the Maldcast.
And we
Thank
did
you
it
all for
live.
sitting through us talking for 3
3
hours. Well,
hours.
for those of you who were here from the Valorant tryouts, you survived 6 hours of me talking. Just like
Congrats.
that's
Quite frankly,
big up. Most people get annoyed by the time it goes to hour 2. So a round of applause to these guys for being amazing hosts with me and for honestly keeping up with the conversation and like having a really insightful time. Up next, we got the Gumbies coming up in 3 minutes. He will be coming up to stream for the next 6 hours. He will be your source of entertainment in this 24-hour stream for the next 6 hours. and that will put
I
us
will
to
occasionally
Greg
be
right
there.
after that from
And
6 a.m. CST to 10 a.m. CST, grinding out. What are you gonna grind out, Greg? What do you think you're gonna grind out?
Maybe I'll be up with
Just a
you.
gaming stream?
Jeez,
Just a gaming stream or a CS Face It stream?
I'm playing
I don't know.
Counter Strike, and I'm gonna
Okay,
lose.
Counter Strike.
all my-
You will see why Greg is too good for IEM Chicago. That is what I will give you the ITE guarantee on that. You know, and that's all the way up till 10 a.m. CST, and from 10 a.m. CST all the way till 12:30 CST, we will in fact have our boy Isaac. Yep, that's right. Our boy Isaac will be streaming
Isaac
with the
and the
Apex
Apex
team.
team are going to
Isaac
be.
will be streaming mainly with the Apex team of Hideki and Hans.
They will be pub stomping people.
And they will be either pub stomping people or climbing the ladder to get to Masters. So that will be all obviously really fun. All three of them are cracked aimers and entertainment. Really, we got entertainment on the house throughout this whole 24-hour event, and then right after that, we will provide you with a informational session by the Student Health Initiative regarding the university's actions with COVID and stuff like that. So that might be something you might be into. And as students of IIT, this might be really important. So definitely do catch that if you want, and spread the message. You know, maybe 12:30 to 2 p.m. CST might be something we might look into. And then we got Jeopardy from 2 to 4 p.m. CST, and then a Q&A with our glorious president himself regarding esports. And this is particularly related to Illinois Tech esports. And from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. tomorrow, CST. And after that, we will take the time to thank each and every one of you who has been here through the whole 24 hours, or the people who have dropped by, because you deserve it. And any extra info that you need, plugs such as the Hawks for Hawks donation, the YouTube channel, the Discord, etc., how you can get involved with ITE, how you can get involved with maybe the Maldcast by joining either our crew, being a guest, or providing ideas for us, because we have a ton of fun. We had a ton of fun right now, and we hope to share that fun with all of you, and hopefully you guys will be able to gain a little bit of insight. So with that, it is 12 a.m., and I think it's perfect time for us to end, isn't it, guys?
I think it's wonderful, Matthew.
All right. Thank you guys for showing up, for sticking
you,
around,
everybody, for
hearing
tuning
us
in,
talk,
and-
and we'll hand it over to the Gumby soon.
Yeah.
And we hope you all had a bearable first week of
I
school.
hope you guys molded.
Yeah.
Hey,
Mauled
let's
it-
mauled.
mauled at us, please. But
Anyways,
yeah,
I had homework due before the first day.
same.
up next, we got the malding professional himself, the malding connoisseur aficionado, Matthew the Gumby's Gombar.
The progenitor of mold.
All right.
Exactly.
Come on.
With that,
Thank you all. Good night.
Go ahead and
hey.